Something that we have to understand is that wherever there is a border, there is going to be smuggling. The history of smuggling along the U.S.-Mexican border goes all the way back to the establishment of the border. There's always been a commerce there of weapons and alcohol going back and forth, and then, of course, legal drugs. Illegal drugs started becoming known in the early 1900s when the U.S. began to clamp down on marijuana. And so a lot of these Mexican gangs that smuggled other items started smuggling marijuana across the U.S. border. Then later, in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, as the U.S. appetite for harder drugs increased, we saw Mexicans get involved in smuggling things like heroin, pharmaceuticals, and even cocaine. So how did the Mexican cartels become what they are now? When we look at the cartels, initially there was one very large cartel that was kind of the grandfather of the modern cartel groups that we know, and that was called the Guadalajara cartel. They became powerful in the 1960s and 70s in Mexico. That cartel ran into an issue in the mid-1980s when the cartel kidnapped, tortured, and murdered a U.S. DEA agent by the name of Enrique Camarena. This got the U.S. government's attention and helped focus on the Guadalajara cartel. The government went in, arrested, and broke up the Guadalajara cartel. Now, after they broke up the cartel, its leader, a man by the name of Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, aka El Padrino, or the Godfather, divided up his turf into various sectors across Mexico. A big factor that has contributed to the power and wealth of Mexican cartels has been cocaine trade. What we saw in the 1970s and 80s is that most of the cocaine was flowing through the Caribbean corridor into Florida directly from South America. As U.S. interdiction efforts became better, the flow of cocaine shifted from the Caribbean to a route that went mostly through Mexico and the soft underbelly of the United States. Using these old historical Mexican trafficking organizations or smuggling organizations to also move this cocaine. So you may ask, why is the violence in Mexico such a big problem? Well, the government really can't dictate the pace of violence because they are not involved in a lot of it. A lot of violence, perhaps even the most violence, comes from cartel and cartel violence, where they are having clashes involving multiple gunmen using RPGs, hand grenades, and even IEDs against each other. And so the government really can't control the tempo of that violence. That's all dependent on the cartels themselves.
When talking about the drug cartels, there is definitely a hierarchy. There are four main people within the drug cartels. The first being the drug lord. This person is the one who runs the entire operation. The second is the lieutenant. He is the person who oversees the cells, and sometimes they're in charge of the money laundering as well. The third is the gatekeeper. He oversees the transportation and shipping within Mexico and into the United States. The fourth is the gatillero. This person is the one who eliminates the cartel's enemies. They're typically younger men from gangs. There are two subdivisions as well, the smugglers and the growers. Most of the smugglers don't know that they are, in fact, smuggling drugs. It could be hidden in a car or somewhere around those areas. The next is the growers. They tend to go into the drug industry just because of the fact that they're trying to provide a better life for their family. The reason that they have this hierarchy is just that if, per se, one of the lower down people got caught, they wouldn't tell the police the information that they know, considering they won't know much. On average, most of the cells are made up of about 10 members, and each member has a certain location or activity, so that way they don't know what the other cells are up to. Most cartels are named after where they are located or where they base their business out of. For example, the Juarez cartel, named after where they're based out of, Juarez. This cartel was led by Amado Castillo Fuentes. Then there's the Tijuana cartel, based out of Tijuana, Mexico. This cartel was led by the Arellano Felix siblings. There's also the Gulf cartel. This one was known for the distribution along the cities on the Gulf. This one was led by Juan Garcia Abrego. There's also the Medellin cartel from Colombia. They use the El Paso Juarez entry as a point of entry for the notorious cocaine business.